Go.
Hi everyone. As the excitement builds for the 2024 election, American citizens have many pressing issues on their minds. Topics like abortion, gun control, LGBTQ rights are sparkling heated debates. But among these critical issues, the most recent economic downturn stands out as the primary concern for most Americans. In our exclusive interview with Rick Newman, a distinguished expert from Yahoo Finance, we delved into the economic landscape under the Biden administration and how it might impact the upcoming race to the White House in 2024. I sat down with Ankur, who interviewed Rick Newman, to discuss what the experts are saying about the current economy of the United States. I am Mugdha Goyal, and you are listening to the News Spark. Hi Ankur, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good as well. It looks like the red and blue supporters are getting ready for the upcoming election.
Yes, they are.
And you just had an interview with Rick Newman.
Yes.
So how are you feeling?
Good. Rick Newman, of course, is a senior columnist from Yahoo Finance, and he knows in and out of
Yes.
Bidenomics. And as a senior columnist, he's a prominent voice in the field of economy, and people reach out to him for providing analysis and.
Absolutely. He's known for his works in economics and finance. So, he's the best person to speak on Bidenomics.
Right, and it was a very insightful interview. We discussed wide varieties of topics, right, from election to the candidate list and from the Republican side.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you learn anything from him? Do you feel like he changed your mind or something?
Well, you know what? For that, let's look at the interview first, and then we can talk about the topics and if he was able to change my mind.
Absolutely. Why wait? Let's get straight to the interview.
Yes, all right.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rick Newman, for your time and agreeing to come on our show. It's so exciting to have you here. We know that you're a senior columnist at Yahoo Finance, and you've been a contributor to CNN and CBS, Wall Street, and you've written 4 books, and you've received many journalistic awards. So I think it's safe to say that you know in and out of the U.S. economy. Is that correct?
I make the cut. Sounds good.
Yeah. So based on your experience, you've seen economy under multiple presidents. How would you judge the current state of U.S. economy under President Biden?
It's an unusual economy because of the COVID pandemic. So by most of the normal ways you measure the economy, the Biden economy is good, especially if you look at the labor market data. I mean, the unemployment rate is extremely low. Biden is correct when he says that the U.S. economy has added, I think it's more than 13 million jobs since he took office. And that is the most of any president in modern U.S. history, and possibly ever at the same point in his presidency. So all of that is good. But there are these weird problems that are making Americans feel kind of bummed out. Inflation is the biggest one, obviously. So inflation peaked in the United States last June at around 9% on a year-over-year basis, and it's now down to 3% on a year-over-year basis. 3% inflation on its own is not really a big deal. But the problem with inflation at 3% now is all the price increases of the last 2 years are still there. So it's not as if prices for most things have been declining. They've just been rising at a smaller rate. And meanwhile, real incomes were negative. For most of the last 2 years, real incomes have been negative, which means inflation has been going up by more than incomes have been going up. So ordinary people have been losing ground. Their paycheck actually has been buying less. Now that trend has now turned around during the last couple of months. Real incomes are now positive, but not by enough that the typical consumer here in the United States really notices. So consumer confidence has been oddly low. I mean, when you look at consumer confidence in the United States, it's at recessionary levels. If you look back in history, how can people be so bummed out when the unemployment rate is below 4% and we're creating record numbers of jobs? And I think the answer has to do with inflation and with all the strange disruptions to the economy that happened during the COVID pandemic, which have not yet been ironed out.
Right. So, Mr. Newman, you touched upon various topics here. So let's dissect a little bit about it. So you discussed about the jobs that Biden administration has created, that there are a record number of jobs. But what do you want to say about the quality of jobs? Because there have been discussions, there have been polls that people are not happy with the quality of job. As you mentioned, they are not earning enough to, meet the bar. They are not saving enough so that they can survive in this tough economy. So what do you want to say about that?
Well, I want to go back to the way you framed the question. For starters, when you said Biden has created 13 million jobs, Biden has not created 13 million jobs. No U.S. president creates jobs. The economy creates the jobs,
right.
And then voters decide whether the president should get credit for those jobs or not. I think what you just described is not a problem unique to the Biden administration. That this is a problem that has been developing in the United States very, very slowly for probably 40 to 50 years. And it's the hollowing out of the middle of the economy. And that used to be manufacturing jobs where you didn't need a college education to get a good paying job on which you could support a family. Those jobs have been going away for a long time. And Biden is actually the first president who is trying and perhaps actually doing something about that. So some of the legislation that Democrats passed when they had control of Congress and that Biden signed during the last 2 years is we are seeing the data that it is generating a boom in factory construction here in the United States. Now, most of those factories are not yet open, but they are being built because private sector companies are deciding we're going to take advantage of the tax breaks or other incentives that has been in this legislation to build these factories. A lot of it is technology, semiconductors, for example. We're seeing a huge boom in factories related to batteries for electric vehicles and other components for electric vehicles. So in theory, those factories will soon be hiring a lot of blue collar workers and paying them pretty well. There are some conditions for some of these government incentives, such as you have to hire union workers, which means they'll be getting paid more. So that could move the needle in terms of these good paying jobs. But there's so much churn in the job market, in the economy on an ongoing basis. I don't know if those factory jobs that Biden is trying to establish, are those going to change? Is that going to change the mind of American voters? And they're going to say, oh, we finally had a president who boosted manufacturing employment by 5% or created, an extra 500,000 or 1 million manufacturing jobs. I don't think so. I think there's so much churn in the labor market that this is going to be a problem for a long time. And I don't think any president on his or her own will have sort of a single solution.
Got it. You mentioned about, the quality of jobs, of course, and how much this administration is doing to make sure that they have enough jobs and the quality of jobs increases. But as you mentioned in between, when you were replying, Biden is not getting the credit probably for what he's doing. Why is that? Because there have been polls and stats constantly from various platforms that, people are still not happy. People don't think that Biden is doing enough. But if you look at the policy in details, he did a lot of things. But again, he's not getting the credit for that. Why is that?
It could be a couple of things. And the way that I measure this is as inflation was going up in the United States, President Biden's approval rating was going down.
Yeah.
Now you can't just say one thing directly caused the other, but there's a clear correlation there. Now that the inflation rate has been coming down, Biden's approval rating has not been going back up. So as the rate of inflation has been coming down, nobody has been saying, "Oh, good, Biden is getting this problem under control. We're starting to feel better about him." They're not feeling better about him in the United States. I think it could be a couple of reasons. Number one, voters are concerned about Joe Biden's age. And I almost feel like he would be more popular if he were to say he's not running for a second term. Then that would allow him to say, I came in for all the people who wanted me to transition away from the chaos of the Trump government. I did it. Mission accomplished. Now I'm going to hand it off to some younger Democrats. And if he were to take that approach, I think people would applaud, and I think his approval rating would actually go up. He's not doing that. Right now he looks like a traditional politician who kind of an egomaniac. He doesn't want to step down. And let's go back to inflation. I think we have forgotten how corrosive inflation really can be and how this freaks people out. Yeah. We have not had meaningful inflation in the United States before now since the early 1980s, which means 2 generations ago. So there were many American voters who weren't even born or don't even remember inflation from the Jimmy Carter years and the early Ronald Reagan years and what it took to get that. And they're seeing the price, rents are going up by double digits. Food prices were going up by double digits for a while. Gasoline prices for us hit $5 per gallon. That's like a disaster for drivers in America, and they're back down now. But people have seen this and they just freak out. They just think something's terribly wrong. And the fact that prices are moderating is not really making people feel better yet. I think if prices were to actually start declining, and instead of disinflation, which is just a lower rate of inflation, if we actually had deflation, in other words, falling prices in ways that people could see, that would be something that would start to make them feel better about Biden. But I'm not sure. So his approval rating now is around the 41%.
41, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not sure it's going to go much higher than that, even as he's running for president.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. There have been talks about rising prices for food and gas. One other thing that is part of it is the housing. So American people are no longer able to afford even the high income. When I say high income, I'm saying like 90, 100K thousand a year. They are not able to afford housing. And people are saying, I've been talking to some of my friends who earn a lot of money in the Bay Area, and they are not able to, save up money for their down payment. What do you think? Where is this housing crisis heading to? Because if this continues, people are not going to be able to afford housing, and it's going to be another crisis altogether.
People already can't afford housing. Mm-hmm. So to some extent, this is a COVID-related problem. But the problem here is there is not enough housing in the United States. Mm-hmm. For a couple of reasons. One of the problems right now is that because interest rates got so low right in the middle of the COVID pandemic, because the Federal Reserve cut interest rates so low, and because what was going on in markets pushed mortgage rates so low, just about anybody who owns a home here in the United States and has a mortgage refinanced at an unbelievably low interest rate. And I was one of them. I mean, I have a mortgage at barely a 3% interest rate. I can't believe it. Like that is the deal of the century. So right. If you were a homeowner and you were able to refinance, you saved a lot of money. I mean, your living costs went down substantially. And all those people, there's no way they're going to sell their home and give up that deal unless they have to for lifestyle reasons. And of course, there always are people who, need to relocate or downsize or something. So, but the biggest problem in the U.S. housing market now is that people who own homes just don't want to sell them. So we're seeing like the lowest rates of existing home sales in a long, long time. I don't have my brain around all that data, but there just are not enough existing homes for sale. And then with regard to making new homes, the problem here is not the federal government. This is a local problem. So there's not enough land available. It's hard to get permitting to build new homes. Nobody wants, once a neighborhood is settled, nobody wants somebody to build a high rise in the neighborhood. There's all kinds of opposition. And the problem here is it's mostly local. So in some of this legislation Biden signed during the last 2 years, there are some incentives for states and mostly for cities, local governments, to create more housing supply. And if you create more housing supply, however you do it, ease up on the permitting or whatever it takes, then you'll qualify for some grants, some federal money that money is just now starting to flow out. It's not clear whether that plan is going to work or not. It does not seem to be any quick fix coming for this housing problem in the United States, and I think this is going to bedevil Biden for the rest of his term, and probably the next president, and maybe the president after that.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned about the policies or the actions that Biden administration is taking to curb this housing crisis, and what are the problems that they are facing. This is the Democratic perspective. Now look at what Donald Trump or the Republicans are doing. So Donald Trump has always been famous for his one-liners. Be it lock her up or build a wall. Instead of showcasing the policy, he gained popularity by giving those one-liners, right? On the opposite side, when Hillary Clinton was running against him, she always discussed about her policy, but she didn't get as much footage as he did. And this time it's happening again. If you look at it, he's mentioning those freedom cities that he's going to build on federal land. Why is he able to say such things if it's not, you're saying, easily attainable? But then this gives him a lot of publicity, and then people think that, okay, he's doing that. Biden administration is not thinking about that. He has an idea. Let's vote for him. What do you want to say about that?
Donald Trump is a unique phenomenon. And I think he's an absolutely horrible politician. When he was president, he just, in my area, which is economics, he just lied constantly. Like many other journalists here who follow the economy, I was just every week I was writing, here are Trump's latest lies on the economy. And there, for whatever reason, this is the kooky part of America, and I know that people in Canada and Europe look at the United States and wonder what is wrong with that country. Well, some of us in the United States look at our own country and say, what is wrong with that country too? But however this works, Donald Trump has figured out that there is some core group of Americans that we call the Trump base here, that they don't really care about his policies. They're just not interested, and these are people, to generalize, who basically feel like the system doesn't work for them, that the politicians are all on the take, that there's a game, that they're on the outside of this game, and they like Trump because he just wants to blow everything up. So for people who feel that the system has just failed them. And there are, the system has failed a lot of people. So Trump, the sort of sick genius of Trump is that he tapped into legitimate grievances among many Americans who just feel left behind by technology, by the way the culture is going, and other modern trends that they don't identify with or keep up with. And those people support Donald Trump no matter what. They don't care if he gets charged with crimes. They probably won't care if he ends up getting convicted and going to jail. They will just say, see, that's more part of the way that the system is rigged against us. And Trump, he is a marketing genius, and he has figured out how to keep those people fired up and loyal. And importantly, they keep sending him money. They keep sending donations to his various political action committees, and he's using some of that money to pay for his legal defenses now. So for you to ask about some Trump policies, I mean, we could get into the Trump policies, whatever they are. His voters don't care about those policies. Right. They care about his willingness to just blow up the system and to attack everybody who they identify with the system. There aren't enough of those Trump voters for him to win in a general election. We saw that in 2020. And more people who might have thought about casting a vote for Trump are now completely turned off because of what happened with the riots at the U.S. Capitol in January 6, 2021, and now all the criminal charges against Trump. So most people don't think he could win in a general election unless his opponent is absolutely terrible, and that's why people worry about Democrats, at least worry about Joe Biden. Who could end up with a health crisis or health problem or something like that and look even more feeble than some people think he is now.
Right. And don't you think that we've seen this movie before in 2016 where, he wanted to blow up things and then people were charged up to vote for him. And then we are seeing the story again and again. People have experienced his administration. They know what has happened. but still there's no cultural shift, if I may say, because again, there are all those top topics that we discuss in cultures, whether it's LGBTQ rights, whether it's abortion, or whether it's gun control. Whenever you ask some American who they identify more with, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican, they always look at these top topics. They forget about the economy, they forget about healthcare, but all these, I don't want to say frivolous, but like topics which probably do not affect them to a large extent. They look at this and then, align themselves with the policy of that particular party. Do you think that this cultural shift is right for the country, and where are the people of US heading in that? I mean, if you look at that.
So that's a lot of questions, and I'll try to sort of break this down in the simplest way I can. Mm-hmm. Trump surfaced a lot of dissatisfaction among the U.S. population in 2016. Mm-hmm. In a way, he has done the whole country a service because he proved that the grievances that people feel about being left behind in modern society, in a modern technology-driven economy, and some of those cultural changes that you talked about, he proved that that is a potent political force. And the lesson there is that politicians need to listen to those people. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to come along and convert all these Trump supporters into Biden supporters or whatever the next generation of candidates are. But those grievances those people have are, for the most part, legitimate. We're talking about all the manufacturing jobs that have left the United States, all the towns in the Midwest that have been hollowed out because the factories have gone and the jobs have gone. So I don't see what's happening now as a repeat of 2016. The way I see this is messy progress. So we are understanding I think at a deeper level many of the problems in the United States that are really buried deep. Those have come to the surface. Remember, Biden beat Trump in 2020, and that was before some of the things that have turned more mainstream people even further against Trump. So we did not see a repeat of 2016 in 2020. We saw somebody come along and beat Trump. And I would argue Biden wasn't even that strong a candidate in 2020, and he still beat Trump. And then you're also seeing more, not enough in my opinion, but more opposition to Trump from within the Republican Party. So a lot of mainstream Republicans hate Trump, but they know they cannot just come out and say that because their own constituents will punish them. So the way I think of 2024 with regard to Donald Trump is I think this is Donald Trump's last gasp. I think after 2024, assuming he does not win, I think he will be done as a political candidate. I think Trumpism will carry on because a lot of other Republicans, such as Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor, he wants those Trump voters. So he wants to be the heir to Trump. And so he is Trumpy, but he's trying to say, look, I'm younger, I'm a new generation, I'm a governor, I have executive experience, and I'm going to fight against the system the way Donald Trump did. That's basically how he's trying to peel off voters. So I think my view is I think Biden is a weak candidate in 2024, mainly because of his age and questions about his, how healthy and how stable he is. But he does have the power of incumbency. And I think if we do end up with Biden versus Trump, remember, Biden could have health issues. The odds of him having some health issue that disrupts the 2024 campaign.
Trump is not that younger either, right? Trump is not that younger than Joe Biden. But
no, Trump is only a couple of years younger than Biden.
Why there is always question about Biden's age? No one's talking about Trump's age.
Well, a lot of people, I think people do talk about Trump's age, and they also talk about Trump's sanity. So I mean, this gets into the mannerisms of each candidate, right? So Biden, in my opinion, Biden does look frail sometimes. He does mumble. He does stumble over words. And a lot of this, Biden has been a so-called gaffe machine for decades. And when he was 45 or 50, I mean, people, I think we didn't know as much then. He has stuttered. He has had a lifelong problem with stuttering.
Yeah.
So cut him some slack for that. But when you see, the 5 or 10-second clip of Biden mangling, some explanation for something, that gets through to voters. And I think combine his lifelong habit of, misspeaking with his age, and that is an image problem for Biden. Trump just has, he represents himself differently. I don't think he seems as old. He doesn't seem any healthier than Biden to me. I mean, he's overweight. Trump often doesn't know what the heck he's talking about. He pretends he does. But I go back to his base, the Trump base, doesn't care. They don't care if he understands policies. They want him to give the finger to the establishment, and Trump never disappoints them.
And do you think that media has a lot of role in that, how they project their candidates? Of course, the media in US is divided to a large extent, right? I mean, there's Fox News and there's CNN, opposite poles, and each is pushing their own agenda. This media division is playing a lot of, they're playing a crucial role in this upcoming election. What do you want to say about that? People are either aligned with one, they're getting their news from one source, or they're listening to the other source and then disregarding facts completely. So what do you want to say about that?
The media is always important in any election, and not just here in the United States. I mean, I'm in the middle of the media maelstrom here in the United States. And yes, we have what you might call partisan media, but this is the way I think about what's going to happen in the 2024 election. And it's the same as what happened in the 2020 election. So people who want to watch Fox News or want to watch whatever they think the Democratic version of Fox News is, they've already made up their mind that their votes are not up for grabs. What happened in 2020 and is going to happen in 2024 is that this election, whoever wins this election, is going to come down to a really small portion of what you would call independent voters or swing voters who have not made up their minds. In 2020, there were 3 states that Biden won by less than 1% of the vote. And that is why he won, because of those 3 states, because of 1% of voters in just 3 states. And it's going to be like that again. So the election is going to swing on people who are not diehard Republicans or diehard Democrats. They might not be registered with either party, and they might not make up their mind until the last week of the election. So I think those tend to be more thoughtful people who are not automatically on one side or the other. They don't necessarily want to hear or buy the propaganda from the parties. And those are the ones who are going to be looking for real information. The U.S. media, if you are a regular person and you want to find out what's going on for real, you can do it. I mean, the information is there. You have to work at it. That's part of what I try to do as a columnist at Yahoo Finance is help people find real information, not garbage, not fake news, that they can use to make up their minds and make decisions. That information is there.
Bidenomics is amazing.
You have to work for it a little bit. You have to work at educating and informing yourself, but it's there. So to some extent, there is a burden on ordinary people to consume a news product that has a high level of quality.
Mm-hmm. Upcoming 2024 elections, we know that Joe Biden is going to be the nominee from Democratic side. I mean, of course, there are some challenges, but everyone knows that he's going to be the nominee from DNC side. And what about the Republican candidates? Who do you think, apart from Trump, would be someone to watch out for probably?
I scratch my head on that. and it is so Trump is leading in the polls by a lot. It's not close. The second person in the polls is Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida. George Will is a columnist for the Washington Post, and he wrote an interesting piece recently saying it's not going to be Trump and it's not going to be DeSantis either. But he didn't say who it was going to be. He just gave the reasons why both of these two guys were likely to implode. I don't know who the candidate to watch is here. There's Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina. He sort of has he's very conservative, but he has this upbeat persona. He's like Mr. Optimism, Mr. Sunshine. So maybe he could gain some traction. Then you get to a lot of other candidates. I mean, I don't see Nikki Haley breaking through. I don't see Chris Christie breaking through. It's going to be really interesting. And just to add one more fascinating factor to what's going to happen on the Republican side, Trump's trial under criminal charges for the misuse of classified documents is now scheduled for May of 2024, which is right at the end of the primary campaigns, but before the Republicans nominating convention, when they will formally decide who their candidate is. So that is considered a strong case against Trump. He could be convicted of federal crimes and, in theory, on his way to prison, and still be the nominee of the Republican Party if the polls hold out and he actually wins the nomination. So I struggle to get my brain around that.
But that's going to be an interesting thing to watch out for, I think. Thank you so much, Mr. Newman. It has been a pleasure. And thank you for answering all the questions. I think our listeners gain a lot of information, and they have a lot to think about for the upcoming elections in the US. Thank you so much,
Ankur. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, well, Ankur, that was an insightful interview. Right. What do you have to say on that?
Well, as you saw, it was very interesting, and Rick Newman answered each and every question that we discussed, and with a ton of examples and various topics, right from, the economy and the candidate list for Republican side.
Yes.
So it was very nice.
And do you think he kind of changed your opinion about something, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I don't know, in detail about each and every topic as much as he did. So, of course, now I'll read more about the things that he said, and
not just you. I think all our listeners too. Yeah.
Exactly. So, but that was very, very, insightful, as you said.
Yeah, so you asked him if there is any suitable candidate from the Republican side, and I think he said that he'll have to scratch his head about that, right? What do you have to say on that?
Well, it's still too early. We know that that President Trump is running, Ron DeSantis is running, Mike Pence is running, but we still don't know who's going to come out as the nominee from the Republican side, and after that, how will it go when they lock horns with President Joe Biden? So there's a lot of things that are to be seen.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be an interesting
But that's the thing with inflation too, right? I mean, the public is criticizing Biden, for not able to curb inflation. But again, there's time for that as well, right? Mm-hmm. He might change opinions.
Yes,
he still has time for
that.
Right,
he still has 1.5 years left, and there are certain policies in pipeline which might change perspective. You never know. But then, as I always say, it's let's wait and watch and see what happens.
And I guess, like Rick said, that he already lost, Trump already lost the last election, so it's not like public opinion hasn't changed. Right? So that is another point. I think we'll just have to wait and see, how the public reacts, and, what, if they weigh policies, or if they weigh cultural sentiments.
Or one-liners.
Or one-liners like we spoke about, yeah. So, yeah, I feel...
It's going to be an interesting election.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much, Mumtaz.
Thank you so much, Ankur.
Sure.